You ever feel like the world's just too loud? I don't mean just volume, I mean noise everywhere. From the moment we wake up, our phones light up with messages. Ads scream for our attention and opinions flood every corner of our lives. It's not just distracting, it's disorienting. We live in a time where deception is wrapped in smiles, and distractions are dressed up as opportunity. And in all this chaos, good people are falling behind. But not because they lack strength or faith or even effort. They fall because they can't see the battlefield. See, life isn't just about fighting harder. Sometimes it's about seeing clearer. We're told to be soft, then told to be strong. We're told to speak up, but also to stay humble. It's confusing. But what if I told you greatest power doesn't lie in how loud you shout or how hard you push, but in how deeply you understand the game you're actually in? There's an old saying, and it might sound a little odd at first: be wise as a serpent and gentle as a dove. It's not a contradiction, it's a strategy. It means be discerning, not naive. Be strong, but not cruel. Be awake, not paranoid. Today, I'm not here to talk about ambition, not about dominance through aggression, but about something deeper, something older. I want to talk to you about dominion through wisdom, about influence through character, about power not through force, but through clarity, because in this world where manipulation is often louder than truth, an image is valued over essence. True authority doesn't scream. It doesn't need to. It walks into the room, and the room adjusts. So what does it take to live like that? There are 5 ancient principles, yes. They may sound a little Machiavellian at first glance, but they're rooted not in corruption or deceit, but in discernment. In timeless truth, these are principles for those who don't want to be controlled by noise, but want to see through it. For those who don't want to react to the world, but shape it. If you've ever felt like you were meant to move with more intention, with more depth, then stay with me, because once you understand these 5 rules, you'll start to see things differently. People won't confuse your silence for weakness. They won't mistake your calm for confusion. You'll stop chasing control and start embodying it. So let's begin this journey not into manipulation, but into mastery, not of others, but of yourself, because that's where real dominion begins. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you sat in complete silence, not just in a quiet room, but in a quiet mind? See, in today's world, silence is almost extinct. We wake up to buzzing phones, scrolling timelines, breaking news, podcast opinions, and endless commentary about things that barely matter. It's like we're drowning in a sea of voices, most of them not even our own. But here's the truth. Nobody tells you silence isn't weakness, silence is power. Restrained. In fact, some of the strongest people I've ever met weren't the ones who spoke the loudest. They were the ones who spoke the least, but when they did, everyone listened. We live in a culture that glorifies noise. The louder you are, the more visible you become. The more visible you are, the more powerful you seem. Right? But that's the trap. Real power doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need to argue, explain, or convince. It just is. Think about a lion. The lion doesn't roar before it hunts. It moves in silence, slow, aware, patient. It doesn't waste its energy making noise. The roar comes after the kill, not before. Now contrast that with the world today. Everyone's roaring, tweeting, posting, shouting their opinions just to be heard. But here's the catch: those who roar constantly rarely catch anything, because when you speak too quickly, you reveal too much. You give away your thoughts, your feelings, your vulnerabilities. You give your enemies a map to your mind. But when you learn to hold your tongue, to watch, to wait, to understand before reacting, you become unreadable. And when people can't read you, they can't predict you. And when they can't predict you, they can't control you. There's a kind of strength in saying nothing, especially when you're provoked. Because let's be real, there will be people who want a reaction from you. They'll push, accuse, twist your words just to see if they can get under your skin, but you don't need to take the bait. Sometimes the most powerful answer is no answer at all. And here's where it goes even deeper, because this isn't just a social skill. It's a spiritual one. When you turn down the noise of the world, you make space for something higher. For wisdom, for clarity. Some of the biggest breakthroughs in my life didn't come while I was talking. They came when I was listening, really listening, not to others, not even to myself, but to the quiet voice underneath it all, the one. We often drown out with distractions. Silence sharpens perception. When you're silent, you start noticing things. The tension behind someone's laughter, the hesitation behind their words, the truth behind their mask, because silence isn't emptiness. Silence is awareness. And the people who truly command a room, they're not always the ones who speak first. They're the ones who say nothing. And still, everyone waits to hear. What they'll say, that's not performance. That's presence. So if you've ever felt underestimated because you're quiet, don't be ashamed. Refine your silence. Don't rush to fill every gap with words. Let your stillness speak, because the moment you stop needing to prove your worth with noise, that's when people start sensing your depth. That's when you become the presence that unsettles the shallow and empowers the wise. You'll be the one who can walk through fire, hear false rumors, face criticism, and still remain composed. Not because you're numb, but because you've learned that power doesn't panic. Silence is not about retreating. It's about choosing when to advance with clarity, precision, and strength. Let the others scramble for attention. You move in silence, and when the time comes, you roar. Let's be honest. Most people aren't led by truth. They're led by what they believe is true. That's a hard pill to swallow, especially if you're someone who values honesty, depth, and authenticity. But look around. The world doesn't reward what's hidden in your heart. It rewards what's visible, what's perceived. You could be wise, talented, full of character. But if others don't see it, you'll be treated as if you have none of it. Let me paint a picture. A king, stripped of his crown, walking through the streets in rags. No one bows. No one listens. Why? Because people don't recognize royalty. Without the robe, now put that same man in regal robes and a golden crown. Suddenly, the same people who ignored him are falling at his feet. What changed? Not the man, just the perception. This is the battlefield most people never learn to fight on, the battlefield of image. And I'm not talking about faking your life on Instagram or pretending to be something you're not. I'm talking about intentional perception, crafting what others see so they know how to respond, because the person who controls how they're perceived controls the outcome. And that's not manipulation, that's mastery. Let me give you something practical. There are moments in life when you're crumbling inside, uncertain, overwhelmed. But if you're leading a team, raising a family, or walking into a negotiation, you can't show all of that. You show stability, even if it's borrowed from your last breath of courage. Not because you're fake, but because leadership demands clarity. There are also times when being underestimated is your greatest weapon. You don't have to flash credentials or dominate a room. Sometimes the most dangerous person is the one who seems harmless, because they move quietly and no one sees them coming. Controlling perception means knowing when to speak and when to remain a mystery. It's understanding that silence can say more than a 10-minute speech. That posture, tone, and timing communicate more than the words themselves. I've seen people with less talent rise faster, not because they were better, but because they understood this. And I've also seen brilliant minds go unnoticed because they thought being good was enough. It's not. In a world ruled by perception, you must learn to speak the language of image. But hear me clearly, you don't need to lie. You just need to reveal selectively. Think of truth like a sword. You don't hand it to just anyone. You choose when to draw it, how much to show, and who is ready to receive it. This isn't about pretending to be someone else. It's about becoming intentional with what parts of yourself you present when, and to whom. Think about the leaders you respect. The people who walk into a room and immediately shift the atmosphere. They don't demand attention. They command it without saying a word. Why? Because they've mastered how they are seen. You ever meet someone and instantly trust them, or instantly doubt them? That snap judgment? That's perception at work. And here's the secret most never realize. You can shape that. You shape it. Through the way you walk into a room, through eye contact, through restraint, through confidence in your body language, even if your hands are trembling. Because people respond to what they sense, not always what's said. And when you become the kind of person who's aware of how they're being perceived, without being a slave to it, you unlock something rare, influence without force, power without noise, leadership without needing permission. So let me leave you with this. You don't have to explain everything. You don't have to be seen in every season. Let your strength be felt, not just shown. Let your clarity guide the room without needing to prove anything, because when perception is in your hands, you don't need to chase control. Control starts to follow you before any battle begins, before a single word is spoken. Before a single move is made, there's already a war happening, and that war is taking place in your mind. See, most of the time, what looks like failure on the outside started as defeat on the inside. Long before someone quits, lashes out, gives up, or gets crushed, they lost the mental battle, they doubted themselves, they questioned their worth, they believed a story that wasn't true. And if your thinking is off even just a little bit, your whole world bends around that distortion. That's how powerful the mind is. Your mindset shapes your decisions shape your direction, and your direction shapes your destiny. Let me put it simply, you don't lose the battle when you fall. You lose it when you believe you're not capable of getting up. Now here's something most people don't realize. The strongest warriors, the people who lead, build, overcome, they don't start with plans or weapons. They start with clarity of thought, clarity of identity, clarity of vision. Because if your mind is aligned, the rest will follow. There's a reason why history remembers not just the conquerors with swords, but the leaders with thoughts. People like Marcus Aurelius, Sun Tzu, even Machiavelli, they knew something we still forget today. The real battlefield is internal. And if you can win there, you can walk into any room, any relationship, any conflict already victorious. So, how do you win the mind? You start by paying attention to the thoughts you allow to take root, because every belief is a seed, and your mind is the soil. You ever catch yourself thinking things like, I'm not ready. I always mess this up. They probably don't respect me. This will never work. Those aren't just harmless thoughts. They become self-fulfilling stories. They guide how you speak, how you show up, how you respond, but flip that, and the game changes. Start planting better thoughts. I may not know everything, but I can figure it out. They haven't seen what I'm capable of yet. This challenge is shaping me, not breaking me. It's not about delusion. It's about direction, because when your thoughts are rooted in clarity and strength, your responses shift. You stop overreacting. You stop engaging in battles that don't matter. You stop needing to prove everything because your mind is already aligned. Let me ask you, how many of your biggest conflicts weren't really about the other person, but about what you believed about them? Or worse, what you believed about yourself in relation to them? The truth is, we don't just fight people, we fight our own narratives. You might be thinking, okay, I get it. But how do I actually change the way I think? Start here. Guard your mind like it's sacred ground. Don't let just anyone speak into it. Question your automatic reactions. Are they based on facts or fears? Speak to yourself with the same clarity and conviction you admire in others, because if you speak to your own soul like a leader, you'll start leading your life instead of being led by circumstance. And here's the magic of mastering the mental battlefield. You'll influence others without forcing them. You'll shift a room without raising your voice. You'll calm conflict not by overpowering it, but by thinking clearer than everyone else. People follow clarity. They trust presence. They are drawn to those who already know who they are. So, before you fight the next battle out there, ask yourself, have I already won the one in here? Because when the mind is steady, the mouth doesn't need to shout. And even your silence begins to carry authority. That's the real edge. That's how you walk into any fight already ahead. Not because you hit harder, but because you thought better. Let's talk about pride. Not the healthy kind, the quiet confidence that comes from doing good work. Showing up with integrity, standing tall in your truth. No, I'm talking about the other kind. The kind that walks into a room 10 feet tall but is shaking inside. The kind that talks louder, brags more, demands respect because deep down, it's terrified of being exposed. Because here's a truth that most people never say out loud. Pride is rarely built on strength. It's built on fear. Think about it. When someone is constantly trying to prove themselves, when they interrupt every conversation to show you how smart, how powerful, how uncheckable they are, it's not confidence you're seeing, it's a shield, a mask, a defense mechanism underneath all that performance. There's almost always a soft spot. Maybe it's a wound from childhood. Maybe it's the fear of being seen as weak, wrong, or irrelevant. Whatever it is, pride is their armor, but like every fortress, it has a crack. And if you're wise, you don't attack the walls, you look for the crack. Because that's where the truth lives. Now, here's the mistake many people make, especially in leadership, relationships, or conflict. They try to confront pride head on. They match arrogance with more arrogance. They push and pride pushes back harder. But if you've ever tried to talk sense into someone mid-tantrum, you already know that never works. The wiser move? Observe, wait, watch not for what they're showing, but what they're hiding. Let me give you an example. There was a man I once worked with. He was brilliant, successful but exhausting. Every meeting became a stage. Every suggestion that wasn't his, he shot down. You couldn't challenge him without triggering this firestorm of defensiveness. At first, I thought he was just difficult. But over time, I realized he wasn't protecting his position. He was protecting an old scar. Something in his past had taught him that being wrong meant being unworthy. So, instead of fighting his pride, I started speaking to the man behind it. I'd say things like, "Your perspective here is strong. Can we add to it rather than change it?" Or, "What you've built is impressive. I think there's a way to protect that while evolving it." Suddenly, the wall didn't need to collapse. It lowered itself. That's not manipulation. That's wisdom. That's discernment. You don't need to outshine someone driven by pride. You need to outthink them with compassion, not condescension, because often pride isn't trying to dominate you. It's just trying to protect them. And if you can recognize that, even in the middle of conflict, you gain an incredible advantage. You can navigate tension without escalation. You can lead without triggering defense. You can influence without ever raising your voice. Here's the hard truth. Many leaders fail not because they weren't capable, but because they didn't understand pride. They took the performance at face value. They challenged the mask, instead of seeing the human beneath it. But if you want to lead, if you want to move with wisdom, if you want to truly rise, you don't go to war with pride. You walk around it. You learn to speak to what it fears, not what it flaunts, and eventually, pride overreaches. It makes a move it shouldn't. It tries too hard, says too much, exposes too soon, and that's when the wise act. So next time someone seems loud, arrogant, uncheckable, don't assume they're untouchable. Assume they're hiding something important. Then wait, watch, and when the moment comes, speak not to their ego, but to their essence. That's how you shift a room. That's how you break through walls. That's how you lead with insight, not impulse, because anyone can confront a mask, but it takes wisdom to see through it. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you met someone and couldn't quite figure them out? They didn't overshare. They didn't rush to impress you. They didn't explain every move they made, but somehow their presence lingered. You kept thinking about them long after the conversation ended. That is the power of mystery. Not secrecy, not deception, but intentional depth. A decision to not put your entire soul on display for likes, for approval, or for validation, because in a world obsessed with visibility and exposure, what's hidden becomes sacred. The most powerful people I've ever encountered weren't the ones shouting in every room. They were the ones everyone else was watching. Quiet, calculated, composed. They said little, but when they spoke, it meant something. That's the difference between noise and presence. See, when people can't label you, they can't limit you. When they can't predict you, they can't prepare for you. And when they can't read you, They respect you because what people don't understand, they tread carefully around. Mystery forces caution, it demands observation. It earns authority without ever asking for it. Let me tell you something hard, but true. The moment people fully understand you, they stop respecting you the same way. It's not always intentional, it's just human nature. Familiarity breeds comfort, but too much familiarity breeds contempt. That's why you don't have to explain every choice. You don't have to announce every goal. You don't have to react to every attack. Silence is a shield. Mystery is a crown. The unpredictable presence will always hold the room, not by force, but by uncertainty. And uncertainty makes people pay attention. You ever notice how the strongest moves are often made in silence? A CEO resigns without a word and the stock market trembles. A leader pauses before speaking and the entire crowd leans in. A friend walks away from conflict without a text, a call, or a rant and the silence screams louder than words. We've been taught that to lead, we have to be loud. That to be respected, we have to be seen. But the truth is, the most revered forces in life don't always announce themselves. Thunder doesn't ask for your attention. It takes it. The moon doesn't compete with the sun, it shines when it's time. And water, perhaps the most underestimated element, can cut through stone. Silently. So here's a thought for you. What if you stopped trying to be understood all the time? What if you let your moves confuse them, your silence unsettle them, your calm power reshape the room? What if, instead of being predictable, you became unreadable? Not to deceive, but to protect? Not to manipulate, but to master yourself, because mystery doesn't just guard your spirit, it guards your leverage. It keeps your patterns from becoming weapons in someone else's hands. It keeps people on their toes. It keeps your next move safe. It keeps you sovereign. And here's the real beauty of it. When you carry mystery, your life stops being performance and starts becoming presence. You stop chasing applause and start commanding reverence. So let them guess. Let them wonder what you're thinking, where you're going, what you're building. Let them underestimate you, misread you, doubt you. Because while they're distracted by assumptions, you're moving in silence, with precision, with purpose. That's not weakness. That's dominion. Let the world try to figure you out. Let them talk. You don't need to be solved. You need to be respected. And mystery, that's how you earn it. Without saying a word. So now we've arrived at the end, but really, this is just the beginning. You've heard the 5 principles: silence, perception, mental clarity, discernment beneath pride, and the sacred power of mystery. But let me say this as clearly as I can. These are not tools of manipulation. They are instruments of mastery, because real power, the kind that lasts, doesn't come from controlling others. It comes from mastering yourself. You don't need to dominate people when you've learned to dominate your impulses. You don't have to raise your voice when your presence speaks volumes. You don't have to constantly explain who you are when your stillness makes the room pause. See, the modern world tells us to hustle louder, to post more, to fight harder. But the older wisdom, timeless wisdom, whispers something different. It says, move slower, see deeper, speak less but with more weight. And most importantly, let your peace be louder than their chaos. Because here's the truth. When you stop trying to be seen, you start becoming felt. And when you stop chasing control, you begin to attract it. Think about the people who hold the most influence in your life. Are they always the loudest, the most reactive, the most visible? Or are they often the ones who move with intention, who don't waste words, who carry themselves with grounded certainty? That's the essence of dominion, not dominance through force, but authority through awareness. When you walk in quiet power, people don't feel the need to challenge you. Not because they're afraid, but because they sense something in you that's rooted, clear, and untouchable. And that kind of presence, it doesn't come from pretending. It doesn't come from posturing. It comes from choosing discipline over drama, focus over noise, and purpose over performance. So maybe today, you don't need to speak more. You need to listen deeper. Maybe you don't need to react faster. You need to think sharper. Maybe you don't need to explain your every move. You just need to be so grounded that your actions explain themselves, because in the end, the greatest form of power is not having to prove you have any dot. It's the ability to walk into a room and shift the atmosphere without needing to say a word, to lead people without controlling them, to disarm conflict without raising your voice, to be the one who sets the tone, not the one who reacts to it. That's not just strategy, that's soul. That's not manipulation, that's maturity, and that's where real influence is born, not in noise, but in stillness. So I'll leave you with this. In a world obsessed with being louder, faster, and more visible, choose to be deeper, choose to be clearer, choose to walk in a kind of wisdom that doesn't just shift rooms, it shifts lives. And when you do, you won't have to chase power. Power will find you.